Every empire that ever rose, every name etched into history, every fortune passed from generation to generation, they all began the same way. Not with power, not with privilege, but with a mindset, a philosophy, a set of invisible laws known only to those who dared to study them. These weren't just ideas, they were weapons, tools, blueprints for self-mastery and material success. And no one mapped these inner laws of achievement more completely than Napoleon Hill. Long before self-help became an industry, long before motivation was clipped into social media reels, Hill was studying giants, titans, men who'd built the unthinkable. He spent 20 years interviewing the greatest minds of his time, decoding the patterns that turned ordinary people into legends. What he discovered wasn't just about wealth. It was about becoming worthy of wealth, not chasing success, but transforming into the kind of person success was drawn to. Hill's wisdom isn't just a list of catchy quotes. It's a system, a living, breathing system for building a life so powerful, the world has no choice but to pay attention. And yet most people never tap into it. They read a quote. Maybe they hear about Think and Grow Rich, but they never truly apply it. They never burn it into their identity. They never live it with the intensity it demands. So it slips past them, like gold left buried in plain sight. But not you, not this time. Because what you're about to hear isn't a summary, it's a resurrection. A voice speaking from the past, reaching into your present, daring you to become more than you've ever been. These are the lost principles that built empires. The timeless truths that sculpted minds into weapons and transformed vision into reality. This is Napoleon Hill, not quoted but embodied. And it begins with one simple, unstoppable force, definiteness of purpose. Hill said it plainly. There is one quality one must possess to win, and that is definiteness of purpose, the knowledge of what one wants, and a burning desire to possess it. That's not wishful thinking. It's not hoping or fantasizing. It's the absolute clarity that rips doubt out of your mind and replaces it with direction. When you lock your vision into something so deeply that nothing can shake it, not failure, not criticism, not time, you become magnetic. The world bends to the will of the focused. Most people never make this decision. They drift, they dabble, they try a little of this, then quit. Try a little of that, then quit. They mistake movement for progress and waste years chasing distractions disguised as opportunities. But the few who choose a purpose, and I mean truly choose it, the way a soldier chooses battle, they walk differently. They think differently. They speak with fewer words and make more impact because they know what they're here to do. This is the beginning of all power, not discipline, not talent, not luck, purpose. Because once your purpose is clear, discipline becomes inevitable. It stops being effort and starts becoming instinct. You no longer wake up wondering what you should do. You wake up with fire in your lungs and steel in your spine because your life is not casual, it's consecrated. Every breath feeds your mission. Every moment becomes leverage. Definiteness of purpose is what separates a wanderer from a warrior. It's what turns men into movement makers. It's what built the minds behind railroads, industries, fortunes, and foundations that outlived their creators. And it's still available. It's still yours to take. But only if you stop dabbling and decide. This decision will cost you your excuses. It will cost you your comfort. But in return, it will give you clarity. And with clarity comes speed, precision, and unstoppable drive. Napoleon Hill knew this wasn't optional. It was the root, the beginning, the spark that ignited every great life. But clarity alone is not enough. You must protect it. And that brings us to Hill's next lost principle, the mastermind. The world will try to pull you off purpose. It will tempt you with easy wins, flattering lies, and the illusion of progress. That's why Hill insisted on something sacred, a circle of power, a mastermind alliance. He defined it as the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. You were never meant to climb alone. You were meant to build with those who sharpen you, who challenge you, who fuel your fire without smothering your spark. Most people surround themselves with comforters, not commanders, with yes men instead of truth tellers. But empires are built by alliances of the focused, not followers of the fickle. If your inner circle doesn't demand more from you, it's not a mastermind. If your conversations don't ignite vision, they're not alliances, they're distractions. You don't need more friends. You need more fire. And when that fire is shared, when minds connect with a common mission, a strange thing happens. Power multiplies. You gain access to insight you didn't earn, strength you didn't build. You borrow from the belief of others until your own belief is unbreakable. And suddenly, you're no longer just one person pushing forward, you're a movement. That's why this principle is still so rare, because it requires intentional association. You must choose who you share your energy with, who gets to speak into your life, who deserves access to your mind. And once you have that purpose and alliance, the next principle becomes unstoppable: faith. But not the kind of faith you've heard in church or seen on social media. Hill wasn't talking about vague hope. He was talking about a practiced belief, a weaponized state of mental certainty. He said, faith is the head chemist of the mind. It's what transforms thoughts into action and action into manifestation. Faith is mental alchemy. It's the process of turning invisible thoughts into tangible outcomes. And it doesn't come from wishing. It comes from repetition, from feeding your mind thoughts of strength, thoughts of success, thoughts of destiny over and over again until they become the dominant frequency of your identity. You don't wait for faith, you build it, you speak it, you train it like a muscle until doubt has no room to breathe. That's what Hill taught, and it's how legends are born. Faith, as Napoleon Hill described it, is not passive. It is not the idle belief that something might work out. It is the active conditioning of the mind, a deliberate program of thought repetition so consistent that doubt loses all oxygen. Hill insisted that faith must be created step by step, thought by thought, just as a body is shaped by repeated motion. Faith grows not by waiting, but by doing, and it becomes stronger every time you act in alignment with your vision despite fear or resistance. This is the core difference between those who merely want and those who achieve. The ones who succeed do not rely on their moods. They don't look to the outside world for reassurance. They generate their own certainty because they've trained it internally. They've learned that repetition of belief is stronger than the randomness of emotion. And here's where most people go wrong. They think their feelings must align before they act. But Napoleon Hill revealed a hidden truth. Emotion is a servant, not a master. If you wait to feel confident, you'll wait forever. But if you act as if you already possess the result, the emotion follows. That's what Hill meant when he wrote, "Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve." Not because magic will deliver it, but because belief drives action, and action forges reality. But faith alone, even built through repetition, is only one half of the engine. The other half is emotion. And that brings us to Hill's next lost principle, one he rarely spoke of directly, but one that underpins everything: emotional transmutation. In Hill's work, particularly in Think and Grow Rich, he alludes to something most miss: the idea that emotion, when redirected, becomes fuel. Specifically, he spoke of the redirection of sexual energy or creative energy into drive, into business, into vision, into building. Most read that and skip past it, but it may be the most powerful insight of all, because every emotion, whether desire, fear, frustration, or longing, carries energy. The average person reacts to emotion. The powerful redirect it. They don't suppress it. They don't run from it. They harness it. They convert it into motion. Hill called it the most powerful form of transmutation known to man, and he meant it. Think about it. Every invention, every empire, every masterpiece began not just with an idea, but with feeling. The burning desire to create, to prove, to conquer, to rise. That emotional charge is what moved mountains, not logic alone. And if you know how to channel it, you become unstoppable. But the key is mastery. You cannot control what you refuse to face. Hill's principle of emotional transmutation demands that you become aware of your internal state, not as a victim of your mood, but as an alchemist. You don't wait to be calm. You cultivate calm. You don't wait to be inspired. You convert the chaos into clarity. And this is where the next principle locks in. The discipline of autosuggestion. To most, autosuggestion sounds like a trick, like something out of a pop psychology book. But Hill wasn't playing games. He defined autosuggestion as the technique of feeding instructions to your subconscious mind until it obeys. He believed your mind could not distinguish between reality and a vividly imagined instruction, and that by planting seeds through language, your entire emotional and behavioral system would begin to shift. It's not affirmations, it's reprogramming. When you speak with conviction, when you repeat with purpose, when you affirm with visual and emotional clarity, your mind begins to accept it as truth. And once it does, your actions align with it. That's how a man who once doubted himself begins walking into rooms like he owns them. That's how a woman who once whispered her dreams now speaks with fire. They didn't wait to feel it, they trained it. Hill's daily practice of reading his goals aloud, with emotion, with faith, with visualization, wasn't just a ritual. It was a mental revolution. Every morning, every night, he was carving new grooves into the brain, new patterns, new pathways, until what was once fiction became inevitable. If you want to live differently, you must speak differently. You must see yourself differently, and you must do it repeatedly until the outer world reflects what your inner world already believes. But here's where most fall short. They try it for a few days, maybe a week, then they quit. Why? Because the change is invisible at first. The transformation is happening beneath the surface, where no one can see, not even them. But Hill knew this. That's why he tied autosuggestion directly to another principle: persistence. Because persistence is the bridge between the invisible and the real. Persistence is the pressure that turns desire into destiny. It is the daily decision to advance, even when nothing appears to be working. When the applause fades, when the results don't come, when doubt creeps in through the cracks, that is where persistence either breaks or builds you. And for Napoleon Hill, this was no minor principle. It was the core element that separated those who dreamed from those who did. Hill saw persistence not as talent, not as natural discipline, but as a choice made repeatedly, a spiritual muscle forged by adversity. He said, "Victory is always possible for the person who refuses to stop fighting. It's not the size of your dream that matters. It's your refusal to abandon it. You don't lose because it's too hard. You lose when you decide that it's not worth it anymore. And the ones who rise, they're not the ones who never fell. They're the ones who never stayed down. Every person who has ever created something timeless, every empire that ever stood, was built by people who kept showing up long after the excitement faded. They understood that motivation is a spark, but persistence is the engine. You don't get to quit when it's inconvenient. You don't get to stop because it's slow. You push, you bleed, you climb, you persist, because that's how the vision becomes real. But here's what Hill understood better than most. Persistence isn't just about grinding endlessly. It's about refining your strategy, adapting to the environment, and outlasting the resistance. Temporary defeat is not failure, it's feedback. Hill emphasized this distinction. He said that many men had success right within their reach, only to give up because they didn't recognize how close they were. And what stopped them? Not circumstance, not fate, but the loss of will. And so he introduced one of his most overlooked ideas, the seed of equivalent benefit. In every setback, there lies the seed of an equal or greater advantage, but it is hidden. It requires vision. It demands patience. Only the persistent find it, because only the persistent stay long enough to extract wisdom from the rubble. If you walk away too soon, you lose the harvest that comes only after the storm. You miss the treasure hidden in the trial. But if you stay, if you dig, you discover that what looked like defeat was preparation, that the rejection was redirection, that the delay was development. This idea is dangerous because it removes the victim mindset. You are no longer a product of circumstance. You become a participant in your own evolution. Everything, even the pain, becomes useful. And when that becomes your frame of mind, you cannot be broken, only sharpened. This is where Hill's deeper wisdom begins to separate from mere motivation, because persistence leads you into something even more mysterious, a faculty he called the sixth sense. Now, this isn't some mystical illusion. Hill described it as the mind's final and most advanced function, a sort of intuitive intelligence that only awakens after all the other principles have been mastered. It's the ability to make decisions with speed and precision, to sense opportunity, to know without analyzing. And it comes not from passivity, but from alignment. When your purpose is clear, when your alliances are powerful, when your faith is trained and your emotions are harnessed, you begin to think differently. Your subconscious mind, fed by repetition and focused intention, starts delivering insights, connections, ideas, and decisions with a speed that logic alone can't explain. Hill believed this sixth sense was what made the difference between ordinary success and legendary impact. You felt it before. That moment when the right idea just came, when you acted without hesitation, and it turned out to be exactly what was needed. That's not random. That's not luck. That's the result of internal conditions being aligned with universal principles. The sixth sense isn't magic. It's mastery. But mastery cannot be rushed, it's not given, it's earned. You must persist long enough to reach the level of mental harmony where these insights can find you. And once you do, your life begins to accelerate. Things start falling into place, not because they got easier, but because you got stronger. At this stage, most people begin to look for tactics, for tricks. But Hill's greatest insight was this: success is not about tactics. It is about transformation. You don't need to find the perfect method. You need to become the kind of person who can succeed with any method. And that only happens when you embrace the internal war. Yes, the war, because every step toward greatness is a battle between old habits and new standards, between who you were and who you're becoming. Hill knew this. He never promised comfort. He promised clarity. He promised power, but he made it clear it would cost you your smallness. And that's where the final unwritten principle emerges, not found on any list, not always spoken out loud, but it's there in every word Hill ever wrote: self-mastery. Self-mastery is the final gate. It's the principle behind all principles, the force that determines whether any of Hill's wisdom can actually take root in your life. Because without self-mastery, your best ideas will betray you, your purpose will dissolve under pressure, your faith will be shallow, your persistence will break the moment comfort is threatened. Hill knew this, even if he didn't always say it directly. He understood that no matter how powerful your vision is, no matter how detailed your plan, it means nothing unless you can control yourself. That means your moods, your habits, your reactions, your cravings, your impatience, your fear, your pride, your ego, all of it. And this isn't about perfection. It's about discipline, control over impulse, command over reaction. Not because you're trying to be robotic, but because you're aiming to be intentional. Every great builder of history had this in common: the ability to delay gratification, to manage internal chaos, to do what needed to be done regardless of the storm inside. This is what separates the great from the forgotten. Self-mastery is what allows you to stick to your purpose when it stops being exciting. It's what keeps you aligned to your values when no one is watching. It's what helps you rise when others fold, not because you're stronger, but because you've trained yourself to be consistent. And that's the word Hill used again and again, trained, because you don't stumble into discipline. You build it, choice by choice, action by action. Every morning routine, every decision to journal instead of scroll, every moment you practice stillness when chaos rises. It counts. It rewires you. And eventually your new identity becomes so strong, the old you can't survive in the same body anymore. But Hill didn't stop at mastery for its own sake. He tied it to something practical, organized planning. Once you have definiteness of purpose and the discipline to back it, the next step is structure, planning, but not just any plan, a living, adaptive plan, one that can change shape when obstacles arise, but never loses direction. Hill wrote, "Plan your work and work your plan." Simple, but how many people live that? You don't drift to greatness. You don't improvise your way to legacy. You architect it. You break the goal into parts. You put dates on the calendar. You track. You review. You adapt. And you keep momentum alive, not by guessing, but by designing. That's why Hill emphasized action so intensely. A plan is only alive if it moves. Ideas are worthless until they're executed. Dreams are meaningless unless they're scheduled. He said, "A quitter never wins and a winner never quits, but just as important, a winner never wanders." They map their vision. And here's the most brutal part. Most people don't fail because of the wrong plan. They fail because they never even made one. Now, even with a plan in place, the real test begins, because the path will not be smooth. In fact, Hill guaranteed that adversity would rise. That failure would flirt with you. That fear would creep in like smoke. And that's why he dedicated so much of his work to the principle of fear management. He didn't call it mindset. He didn't call it emotional intelligence. He called it what it was, the enemy, fear, the invisible enemy that destroys more dreams than poverty ever could. Hill identified 6 basic fears: fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death. These are the ghosts that haunt your decisions, that stop your hand just before you send the message, make the call, take the leap. And here's what Hill insisted. Fear can be defeated, but only by exposure, only by doing the thing you fear, not once, but over and over until the emotion loses its power, until your nervous system learns that risk does not equal ruin. That discomfort does not mean death. You don't escape fear by hiding from it. You kill it by confronting it. That's why Hill's work at its core is not about money or achievement. It's about becoming braver. Every principle is designed to forge a stronger you, not a more comfortable life, but a stronger self, so that no matter what life throws at you, you remain unshaken, centered, intentional. And this leads to the final responsibility Hill placed on every reader, not a law, not a technique, but a truth. You are the cause of your results. He wrote, "You are the master of your destiny. You can influence, direct, and control your own environment. You can make your life what you want it to be." That sentence is liberation and a warning, because if you accept it, you can never blame again. You can never point to circumstance, to upbringing, to environment, to betrayal, and say, "This is why I failed." Number, if you accept Hill's truth, then you are the variable, always. And this is what scares people most, because it removes the illusion of external control. It puts the mirror in your hand and it says, if your life isn't where you want it to be, change it. If your mind isn't working for you, retrain it. If your circle doesn't push you, upgrade it. No excuses, no waiting, no rescue. You are the rescuer. You are the storm. You are the cause. This level of responsibility is rare. It's painful. But it is the only kind that leads to freedom. Because once you own everything, you can change anything. At the core of everything Napoleon Hill taught was a single piercing mandate: think. not just casually, not emotionally, but accurately, boldly, deliberately. He believed that thought, directed, conscious, persistent thought, was the most powerful tool ever placed in human hands. But most people never learn to use it. They drift, they react. They live in mental autopilot, chained to the whims of external chaos, driven by habits they never chose and fears they never challenged. But not you. You were born with the power to direct your mind like a laser, to hold an image in your consciousness so vividly that the world begins to bend in response. That is not poetry. That is Hill's central thesis, that your mind is not just a recording device, it is a projector. And whatever you hold in that beam long enough becomes your reality. But this kind of thought requires effort. It is not the default setting. It's forged through reading, reflection, solitude, journaling, deep conversations, and an unrelenting focus on growth. Hill challenged every one of us to audit our thinking, to notice the thoughts that creep in at 2 a.m., to catch the doubt before it plants roots, to interrogate the beliefs passed down by family, media, or failure, and to choose again. To think deliberately is to become sovereign. It means no longer borrowing your limits from society. It means deciding what success means to you and ruthlessly pursuing it, not out of desperation, but out of clarity. This kind of thinking is rare. That's why Hill's work still matters. Because in a world of noise, of cheap dopamine and viral distractions, he invites you to slow down and build something eternal. And what does that building look like? It begins with belief, but not shallow belief, not temporary inspiration. It's the kind of belief that survives failure, that gets laughed at, that faces silence, that loses before it wins. It's belief that's earned through repetition and tested by pain. Hill called this definiteness of purpose, the unshakable knowing that your life has a mission and that you will not betray it no matter the weather. And from that belief comes behavior, because belief without action is just a daydream. But belief that moves, that wakes up early, that rewires habits, that studies, that sacrifices, becomes a force. And when that force is sustained long enough, it becomes identity. You no longer try to succeed. You are the kind of person who succeeds. You no longer chase results, you attract them. That's the alchemy Napoleon Hill was teaching, the transformation of thought into identity, of desire into destiny, of suffering into sovereignty. And so the question is no longer, will this work for me? The real question is, will I work for it? Because all the principles are here, the blueprint is written, the road is mapped, but it will not walk itself. You must move, you must rise, you must decide again and again that your future is non-negotiable, and you must become the kind of person who lives these truths, not just speaks them. So let this not be a video you watched. Let it be a line in the sand. From this moment forward, no more small thinking, no more passive days, no more betrayal of your calling. You are done apologizing for your ambition, done shrinking to fit other people's expectations, done waiting for permission. You have Napoleon Hill's wisdom in your hands. Now use it. Build the thing. Write the plan. Cut the noise. Feed the mind. Align the circle. Raise the standard. Fight the fear. And act like your vision is inevitable. Because it is, if you are. Empires are not built by perfect people. They're built by decided ones, by the few who choose purpose over popularity, process over procrastination, growth over comfort, discipline over doubt. Be one of them. Be the proof that Hill was right. Let your life be the evidence that belief, backed by persistence, forged in purpose, and executed in silence, still builds empires. Now go. Your legacy is waiting. The world makes way for those who dare to rise. Click the rise button now and claim the destiny waiting for you. Your time is now.